Tēnā koutou katoa. There we are. I am on Haere Maiki Tēnei Hui. Te iwi o rangitāne, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to Culture and Sport for the 25th of June 2025. Everybody, thank you for being here with us this afternoon. I'm Councillor Rachel Bowen. I'm in the chair today, joined by Administration and Advisory Staff Natalia, Sarah, and Chris Dryberg, who's our General Manager, Infrastructure, who's advising today as well. Thank you all for being here. As usual, the meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The health and safety requirements for the Chamber are on the screens in front of you, so please take a moment to familiarise yourselves with those if you're not already. If we have online participants, and I see Councillor Finlay online, reminded to keep cameras turned on but microphones off unless speaking. Thank you. Councillors and presenters will give names before they're speaking and use the microphone. And for our guests today, you need a red light on the microphone, which is the right-hand button, and you need to be quite close to it so that we can hear you. Thank you. So I will invite our Deputy Mayor, Whaia Debbie Marshall-Lobb, to open us with karakia, please. Whaia.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, o te rā, tēnā tātou katoa. Tū tawa mai I runga, tū tawa mai I raro, tū tawa mai I roto, tū tawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kia ora, thank you, Whaia Deb. First item on today's agenda is to receive the apologies from Mayor Grant Smith and from Councillor Lou Finlay for early departure. Are there any others to add to that? Then I will move that, seconded by the Deputy Chair, Councillor Meehan, and invite you to vote to receive those apologies. I'm not expecting this level of tension over the apologies. Carried unanimously, thank you. Notification of additional items, I haven't received any, assuming none. So we'll move on, thank you, as with declarations of interest. Thank you. Not aware of any public comment. So then we will move to the presentations which are in our agenda, first of which is a presentation from Manawatu Summer Shakespeare. I'll invite Rhiann Furman and Rachel Leonard, Artistic Directors of Manawatu Summer Shakespeare, to come and join us. Kia ora korua.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Council. Thank you so much for having us today. Ko Rachel Tukuingoa.
Ko Rhiann tōku ingoa.
We are the Artistic Directors of Manawatu Summer Shakespeare, and as you all know, this was delivered in partnership with Palmerston North City Council in February 2025. Our goal this year, as it is every year, was to deliver an engaging, accessible and high-quality experience for the community for Koha entry, and this year's production exceeded quite a few of our expectations. Briefly, we'll just run you through, in our opinion, some of the highlights of the season. This was a year not without its challenges. We, again, as you'll see later on, faced severe budget shortfalls. Pretty right to the end of opening night hit us on our toes as well. Rising costs and challenges to funding and budget shortfalls were obviously a major challenge. Our other major challenge was the loss of our leading lady 3.5 weeks before opening night. Fortunately, we had a New Zealand actor trained performer in our team already. So we did a little shift in leadership, and Rhiann took on the role of Prospera. I took on the directing, and both, it seemed to work out in the end. There was some pretty solid feedback for both, but it certainly put us all to the test. It was a bit of a disruption and challenge to our wider team, as well as to Rian having to hand over a vision and learn how many?
Hundreds and hundreds of lines.
Yeah, in a very
Within
short
2
turnaround. So in terms of the highlights this year, Rian's performance proved to be one of the most frequently acknowledged highlights of the production. We've received outstanding reviews and comments online, as well as in our surveys. Other highlights from our perspective were the inclusion of 4 high school students in our company. That made a great difference in the energy and also in the investment of not just the performers, but their wider school communities. Our production design, including the set design by emerging designer Nena Kiriyama Stevenson, who we provided mentorship for through the Arts Heart Grant, and she managed to deliver a visually impactful, resonant and practical scenography. She also engaged support from Rangatane in the development of her core Whai design, so it was designed specifically to this space and this land. Excellent production delivery from costume designers, and one of the highlights and audience favourites was the lighting design by Piers Barber, who rose through Summer Shakespeare through mentorship and has now been leading this technical design for about
Over a decade.
over a decade. Yep. Our mentorship program through Arts Heart saw senior company members take on some more leadership and responsibility across the board. We had record online engagement in response to a strong marketing campaign and overwhelming positive feedback from both audience and participants. We engaged new sponsors and new in-kind supports, and the one thing we're most proud of is that somehow the Tempest proved to be our best attended season since records have begun, with averages showing around 300 people per night. We've been building steadily since 2020 in our audiences, and somehow this managed to surpass the previous record holder, Romeo and Juliet, of 2023, which, because it is Romeo and Juliet, seemed pretty impossible. So we think there's some strong confidence in both our brand and community, and people are showing up. Awesome. Do you want to take us away with these next slides?
So we're just going to look now at how much we achieved, how well it went, and how our event left our community and our people better off. So our agreed performance measures were...
Sorry.
So how much, the numbers and participation, how well, the quality of experience and delivery, and better off, the impact on individuals and the wider community. These tangible outcomes represent the layers of value of the project, measuring its artistic, social and economic successes. So how much? So total number within our Rōpū was 52 people. Breaking this down, there were 23 actors across 21 roles because 2 roles were recast during the process. Production team had 19 skilled professionals and creatives, and we had 12 amazing volunteers who made every show run really smoothly. So these numbers highlight the collaborative and community-powered nature of the project, and every person involved brought their own unique skill set and passion. So of those 52 participants, 42 were returning. So that's over 80% retention, and 10 were new, so nearly 1 in 5. So this strong return rate shows that we as MSS are not only a positive experience, it's a creative home people come back to. And we continue year after year to welcome new voices into the fold. So performance and attendance. So we scheduled 8 performances due to weather conditions, being an outdoor event. 1 was rained off. However, 7 of the shows went ahead, and we welcomed an estimated 2,300 to 2,400 50 people across the entire season. So this was our record-breaking season, so the most we have ever had. So that's proof that our audience numbers are growing and our reputation is growing each year that we create this event. So moving into audience reach.
Is that us over here?
The one before that,
The one
I
before
believe.
that, sorry.
Which we have there a table showing the expanse of places that people came to watch our show from. So this was based on a survey with the audience, and that we had 262 people participate in that survey, and they came from every corner of Palmerston North, across the wider Manawatu, and some from even further afield, such as Wellington, Christchurch, Auckland, specifically to attend the show. Yep.
We had a...
And I think someone from Germany as well.
Yeah, so
So
it broke
even
down
from
to...
overseas.
So from the respondents, 67% came from Palmerston North and the wider Palmerston North region, and 32% came from out of town. Awesome. We've got some how did you hear about us responses. We do have a marketing and analytics report that shows more detailed responses to the surveys, but just to as a gauge of what's working for us and where our marketing's coming from. Most of our audience are hearing about us from social media. Friends and Whānau takes the next spot, and then the third spot is it's a tradition for people to attend, so they already know that it's coming up. We asked respondents, do you agree that Manawatu Summer Shakespeare is a valuable event in Palmerston North? And 100% of respondents agreed, with 94.7% strongly agreeing. So a fairly unanimous response, reinforcing what we've always believed, that Manawatu Summer Shakespeare is a cultural taonga for our city. How did we go in terms of what they thought? We could be here all day with all the lovely things that audience said about us. We do have a full breakdown of that in our analytics report that Gillian can make available. Well, I could go on forever. How many slides do we put on these? It's magic, it's accessible, it's simply the best I've seen so far. It keeps the theatre alive in Palmerston North. Very nice, thank you, audience. Please feel free to peruse all the lovely things people said about us at your own leisure. How well? How did we do? Again, it's hard for us on the inside. We think we did great. It's hard for us on the inside to be objective about that, so we're going back to what we collated in the responses. The community pulls together, making theatre accessible for those who don't usually watch it. Our feedback was just absolutely extraordinary.
So we received feedback not only from the audience, we also surveyed our cast and crew as well to get their feedback. So all of these are inclusive of both spaces.
Yep, and most of the data comes from the surveys, but there's also huge amounts on our Facebook socials and Instagram comments as well. So from the cast and crew's perspective, that takes us to performance measure 3, which is this work making the city of Palmerston North and its participants better off as artists and as people? We surveyed 24 responses to the survey. All the cast members responded. 75% strongly agreed that this project grew their skills, and 25 agreed. So 100% agreed that they had benefited from this project. 100% said that they would return. So we see this as a strong endorsement of Manawatu Summer Shakespeare as a learning and development opportunity and a creative touchstone for our performers. We are starting to see the effect of a lack of further training for people in the Manawatu, with Massey's closure, UCOL's closure, and various things shutting down. So this is a place where people who aren't musically inclined can come and train and get some experience. Again, beautiful, heartwarming responses from the cast and the audience. I'm just jumping ahead because I saw Rachel peeking at the clock there. So wellbeing community impact is something that's important to our community, and our cast told us that every aspect of my life is enriched by Manawatu Summer Shakespeare. It builds connections, improves my fitness, and gives me purpose. So that's pretty great. We are trying to align with the Palmerston North City Council's Strategic Alignment Goal 2 to invest in a creative and exciting city. Again, extraordinary responses that support these ideas. People are very, very effusive with their feedback. I love these quotes. Summer Shakespeare is a jewel. This event makes me proud to live in Palmy. And Palmy creates world-class talent. My very favourite that I think is pertinent to bring up here is that one respondent said that Palmerston North City Council sponsorship is an excellent use of ratepayers' money. So you heard it from the community. All right, I should do this bit, shouldn't I? All right, what did it cost? Expenses. So income confirmed in January was $72,600 with a projected expenditure of $82,795. So we had a projected loss in January of $10,195. A terrifying number for us, but a substantially less terrifying number than the same time the previous year. We did manage to attract some great community sponsorship, but that was still terrifying. So we made some substantial budget cuts again. We did another push for in-kind and private sponsorship. We also made it possible for koha to be donated online. And this addressed a lot of the shortfall, but not all of it. When we opened on the 20th of February, we were looking at a projected loss of $3,825. March 2025, at the close of the season, we did receive a larger than projected koha. I think I had been a bit conservative on that koha projection. And we managed to pull our expenses down to $75,474.12 with an income of $75,935.11, making a surplus of $490.99. However, there was, we did have to do a little bit of emergency reframing to not end up in debt. And what we did have to do there was the creative leads had to do some fees donating. So at the start we mentioned how Rian had to pull out of the role of director. She gave up $1,000 of her personal fee in acknowledgement that she couldn't complete that role. I donated my time, that had I not been available to take on that direction and another actor not been able to be found to play the role, we would have had to pull in a director at around $3,500 to $5,000. And our business manager donated his fee of $2,000, and I also donated my intimacy coordination fee for this community. We also received a huge amount of in-kind sponsorship that we hadn't accounted for, including like Red Ravens community group who donated use of their swords, which would have cost us lots of money. So, so a little bit tight, a little bit too tight for comfort this year. We can valuing our in-kind support at around $33,550. This includes some major expenses like rehearsal venue, and we are always on the edge of our seats as to whether or not Massey University will return to partner with us. If they do not, that is going to make a huge impact on our costs. So the total cost of the project would have been approximately $109,024. So reflecting on 2025.
So the Tempest, as we said, broke records for attendance and koha in a project which is increasing capacity and interest every single year that we do this. So our audience continues to grow and our reputation continues to grow. Budget challenges continue to be the biggest obstacle for our delivery, with many of our budget cuts coming from our own fees, as we've just stated, and manaakitanga, and we had to cut our VIP sponsorship event this year because we just didn't have the budget to put that on, or we had to reframe it, and acknowledgements for our volunteers also had to be cut. We actually do like to gift koha anyone that is involved with us, but we had to tighten the purse strings this year.
Yeah, and little things like when we're not paying people who show up to build the set, it's nice to be able to feed them. A lot of that sort of things had to go this year. We're not going to factor in what it would cost if we had to pay everybody. So we're reflecting on that. Again, ideally, the course funding from PNCC makes this production possible. Ideally, finding someone to match or even halve what the council, that would set us up nice and safely as we begin. We need to continue to invest in infrastructure. Our biggest fear, of course, is the lack of a space and a lack of a home for us. So this continues to be a priority of how we can future-proof this. This year we also faced a few security issues with rising tensions within the community. Our space wasn't always safe in the Esplanade, and we faced some aggression and some
We had a particular incident this year, which it's been a one-off. In all the years that we've been involved, it's never happened. But
keeping our people safe, especially when we're bringing in more youth, is going to be a priority for us next year as well. There's probably lots to say, but I can see you all getting a little bit itchy, so we want to make time for questions. We'd love to keep Manawatu Summer Shakespeare going, keep it thriving, and find a way for it to continue to exist for 2026 and beyond. And we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you both. Yes, invite questions from members if you have any. Councillor Harpeter, you have one.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel and Rhianna. Really great listening to your presentation. Just thinking about 2026 and going forward and listening to your challenges, what have you thought about how you're going to overcome those challenges and what you're going to do looking forward?
We're looking at, one of the things that seems to be the biggest thing that PAMI responds to is that this show is available for koha. So we don't want to get rid of that, but we're wondering, what does a more structured pay what you can system look like? Would it be possible to say under 13s are always free, or a gold coin, and 13 to 18s are $5 or a gold coin, and just give people a bit more frame around what that koha looks like, which would allow us to project more accurately and budget a bit more clearly. That, of course, comes with its own supports and infrastructure needs around that, but that's on the cards as well. We're continuing to search for sponsorship is obviously a big priority, and it's always a bit up in the air. We had, for the first time in many years, Eastern and Central Community Trust joined us, and that made a huge difference, but we can't guarantee that they might again. So we're on the edge of our seats and very keen for ideas.
Are you a registered charity?
We are not a registered charity.
limited
Are
business.
you looking at those kind of ideas?
We have been, yes, that is on the cards. It just creates more mahi for us in order to, make that happen. But it's definitely been in talks as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So what's the plan for next year? Obviously, we've been in this different space where you guys have held the space while we moved from our joint arrangement with Massey before, but is this something that you're committed to continuing, or what's that look like for next year?
Between us and Simple Truth, we have internally committed to 2 more, which buys us a bit more time to look at what happens next and whether or not that is us that continues, or whether that's now in a place that we can bring through the next artistic leads. We thought it might be just better for everybody's nerves if we can just say, yes, we are going to proceed for at least 2 more years. And that allows us to think in terms of a 2-year strategy, like what are we programming next year, what are we programming the following year? If we can't get sponsors next year, are they interested in coming on board the following, so it allows us to plan a bit better. We need to look at, this, we need to look at how we can keep a little bit of work happening through the year and value that time a little bit better, because at the moment, this is we sort of work on this project all year round. We're finishing up with 2025 now in June, and next week we're going to start work on 2026. In fact, we've already started. So, if there was a way to bleed a little bit of funds across the year, that would be great. we're looking at ways between us and Simple Truth to build our community further and offer things like, not necessarily just for people who want to do Summer Shakespeare, but workshops and skill building to keep momentum going through the year.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you both. I have a question which is probably for officers, and I see Gillian and Stephanie in the audience. But in reflecting on the challenges that Summer Shakespeare have experienced and the requests for help around funding particularly, where do council sit in this? What support are we able to offer?
Kia ora koutou, ko Gillian Tasker Takawao Ingoa, Arts Advisor with the Community Development Team. Yes, we've been in discussions with Rachel and Rhiannon throughout, offering them support letters to appeal to other funders and introductions to other funders as we can. And of course, supporting internally with advice from our marketing team, our comms team, share information that comes through as well from the team, and resources from events as well, to set up the survey this year for the first time to get some good data.
And there was a particular request, I think, there for help to look for a naming rights sponsor or a significant sponsor. Is that something we can help with?
Yes, I believe the councillors actually worked on some of that last year, but we can certainly look at that again this year.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Gillian. Thank you, Rachel and Rhiannon. There are no further questions. Thanks for coming in and talking to us about Summer Shakespeare this year.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you in the summer.
Yay, thank you. So the recommendation is that we receive presentation for information. I'm happy to move that, seconded by Councillor May, and I'll open for any comments. I always think it's a huge challenge to have to comment on Summer Shakespeare, because my comments end up a bit like the chair of the Olympic Committee, where I declare it was the best year ever. And then the next year is the best year ever, and it's always the best year ever. But maybe that's because it is always the best year ever, and The Tempest was a show that I think will live long in people's minds, those of us who went to see it. It'll probably live longer in your mind, Rhiannon, having to learn the whole thing. I certainly always appreciate that setting in the Rose Garden. It's so special, and that's a lot of the community comment about that. Is it's one of the few times that people see the Rose Garden as a destination, and we get a different use of that space because of it. What I always enjoy is the people who don't know that Summer Shakespeare is on and go for a walk with their dog, or at the show I was at, ride their bike through the Rose Garden and find themselves in the middle of a production. And it's always quite amusing to me just to see them try to figure out what on earth is going on in the middle of the Rose Garden in Palmerston North. And for me, that does link really strongly to where you talked about that goal too of being a creative and exciting city, that we activate spaces in unusual ways and people are surprised by what they come across. And you certainly succeeded in that for me. So I think we're declaring it an artistic, social and economic success, not without its challenges. And this continues to be a challenging space. You are not the first and will definitely not be the last community group to be in this chamber talking about the difficulties of funding. And I'm pleased to hear from officers that we're committed to walking alongside you to continue to deliver this programme. So thank you. Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say well done to you for what you have done so far, but also I think it'd be worth putting together some ideas about setting up a charity. I think an organisation that can attract funding with a charity behind it, a charity status behind it, is a better way forward. So I think that's probably where you need to head, and maybe with a strategic plan, little one around it, something along those lines. Not trying to tell you what to do, but I just think it just helps your organisation going forward. I know it's really hard to attract funding, but if you have that kind of structure behind it, it does help going forward. It is hard for organisations to get funding, and if you've only got the City Council as your funder, you need other organisations to help you. So, but always think that City Council is always wanting to do that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's the end of comments on that issue. So I will look for a vote, please. We lost Councillor Finlay. Okay. Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our presentation from New Zealand Rural Games. James Stewart, the Chair of the Rural Games Trust, and Daniel O'Regan from New Zealand Rural Games to come and talk us through their presentation. Neither of you are strangers to the chamber. Welcome here, and we'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Kia ora. You know us, so that's all good. Look, Rural Games, it was our best year ever last year, just like the last ones. No one got that, but anyway. Look, a few developments in the games over the last few months. I've become chair, finally. I've got enough on. I didn't need this role, but I do believe in the Rural Games. It's so important for this region. It has all those values, youth, sporting, mixed with a bit of agri. Digging up the square is always fun. So thank you. Thank you for your support over the years for the Rural Games. And it's been really good to get some good data sets this year with our report that Daniel got sorted, and so hopefully you've had a good look through that and seen some return on your investment into the games.
Tēnā koutou katoa. We've put together this presentation just to give you a bit of an overview and a bit of an update, and I'll come to the economic information at the end, just to keep your attention for the first part. The New Zealand Rural Games Trust has a number of strands. One of them is AgriFutures, and that involves Clash of the Colleges, in-school modules about ag and hort, scholarships, and a pathways program as well around careers in ag and hort. This year, for the Clash of the Colleges that we held here in Palmerston North, we didn't quite get the number of students. There's an issue out there for schools in other regions and travel and costs, and there has been a significant decrease in funding for schools to do that. One of the things that we're doing to overcome this is to open the Clash up to intermediate schools. We've done this in Canterbury before and it's worked really well. And we're just currently planning our event in Telford, and we now have 260 students and are fully registered for that event, which is the first time that's happened in Southland. So I'm feeling quite confident that we'll get the numbers back up there for 2026. Got the number of schools up there that have attended, and some of the people, the VIPs and that sort of stuff that were also involved. So the Games as a whole attracts a series of quite famous people, including former Olympians and current Olympians, and it was awesome to have Dylan and Erica Dawson. Both of these two have family members here in the Manawatu, and it was particular. Erica was just absolutely fantastic over the whole weekend. She just really dug in and got amongst it, which was fantastic. The Sports Awards, that's on the Friday night, so that's our high-end sort of event, ticketed event at the racecourse, and again some very high-level coaches, former All Black coach Sir Wayne Smith, Tim Southey, and Erica Dawson. We are about to announce another award as part of this, and we'll be doing that when we call for nominations for 2026 later this year. But it's exciting that we've got a bit of something new on the offering there, and we are promising everyone that comes that we will make sure that the event finishes on time, because we do tend to go over time.
That's a strong directive from the board that we keep the dinner a bit shorter. So yeah, but
some of the sporting achievements. So there's about 200 odd athletes at the Games over the weekend. Some of you will know Adam Miller. He's probably one of the strongest men in the city, if not one in the country. Got a new New Zealand weight for height record there. And Steph Dryfout, she's a formerly expat fielding girl, who won the Rural Sports Awards Supreme winner for the overall rural sports person. She's an international athlete and is current world champion. And then Adam actually also had his 4th victory in the CNEGA Southern Hemisphere Highland Heavies Championship. He's a real powerhouse. But at least half of the heavies are from the Palmerston North. There's one from Martin, one from Danny Burke, and about 3 from here in Palmy. kids in country, and yeah, this area continues to be really successful. We are thinking about some changes to try and add something a little bit different. The tree climbing is always a successful thing, as well as the haystack hunt and digger drivers. James here even helped out with the digger driving this year.
Yeah, it was a bit dodgy, but yeah, seeing those kids really having fun on these machines and trying to control them it's just their exposure to this sort of thing. So, and I go back, I think it was last year, there was a family in front of me on the shoulders, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, we're in your way." And I said, "Are they enjoying it?" And they said, "Hey, this is amazing. We'd never get to see this." They were urban people. How does our son become a farmer? It could have been a daughter. I can't remember what the kid was, but yeah, how do we get into farming? And this is a great way to get exposed to this sort of thing. So that's really important for us.
Sport Manawa 2 help us with this, as well as Kelly Sports and Kelly Club. Kelly Sports is based here in Broadway and is a national operation, and they in turn work in with Palmerston North Girls, who come along and help as volunteers to run this. Have a go. Hopefully you all saw the booklets. This is the first time we've done a booklet, and the feedback from parents was awesome. It was the first time that the kids felt that, well, kids actually directed parents as to what they had to do and needed to do in order to go into the draw to win a prize. I think it was at least 5 stamps, and it had to be gathered from various events. This time was the first time that we had an event outside the square, so it was in the plaza, Farmyard Putt Putt, and as some of you all know, that event or activation continues to this day and probably will for the rest of the year, but it was great to actually extend the size of what we're offering. The other part of that was the steam traction engine from over in Fielding, the team there coming into the square for the first time, and they had their busiest event. It was about 2,500 people, I believe. So we are talking with them, and there is actually some smaller steam traction engines that kids can use, and we are hopefully going to have that in the square next year as well. As I'm getting older, my eyesight is getting a little bit harder, so I'm just going to take my glasses off and read from the screen here. This is about our reach. We estimate there was about 42,500 attendees. This is the first time that we've actually got a bit of a best feel for how many people were in attendance. A lot of you will know that council's invested in a LiveGauge, which is basically off a cell phone pinger, and that helps estimate the crowds. They've put us in a category which is a family category, and through that, only 1% of the audience is considered adults without mobile phones, 6% is children without mobile phones, and we believe that our event is different. Yes, we are a family event, but there's no way that there were only 6% kids there. We believe the numbers are higher, and so we have come up with our own figures, which we base around our audience of kids being around 15%. So we believe it's about 42.5, and overall I think it's about 37.5 for the LiveGauge numbers. We were affected by rain on Saturday afternoon, so our Saturday normally is our busiest day, but it was pretty even Stevens. This year our Sunday was the busiest we've ever had, whereas the Saturday was quieter. As soon as the rain hit, quite a lot of people went through the front doors of the plaza. Cool. Online, our numbers just keep continuing to grow, and mostly this was to do with TikTok. So 6.75 million eyes on what we're doing, and when I put this figure together, it comes from Hootsuite, it comes from TikTok, it comes from Stuff, Geo advertising, More FM, MediaWorks, and those sorts of things. It's quite a large figure, and it kind of seems hard to believe, but in reality, TikTok just makes you available to the world. YouTube continues to be really strong. We're just about reaching 4,000 followers, watchers on that, which is awesome. The majority of our audience is in the US, followed by Aussie and New Zealand. And views, we've got about 147,000 there. It's pretty decent. Print media, this is the first year that it's actually risen in nearly 4 years. We all know what's happened to print media in this country, around the world, and radio has also starting to rise again as well. It's really quite impressive that that loss in audience has been arrested. Television wasn't as high as normal. We got about down here about 600,000, and the main reason for that was because of 7 Sharp and a really awesome piece of coverage there for one of our shearers who won the championship. And our 1 hour program has been on TV3, and it's likely we are entering into a conversation. Janine, not for broadcast.
Yeah.
It's
very
likely-
hot off the press. So contract hasn't been signed, but there's a really exciting development around coverage, and that will really be good for this region because there'll be a lot more exposure. Can we go into that into more detail?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 2 channels on the country, so
Yeah.
I think we know
So
what
it
we're
might
talking
be-
about.
Yeah. The other one.
Yeah, the other one. And with that comes a number of other programs that will be on TVNZ Plus.
And streaming, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other interesting things was that Pacifica TV that replays a lot of New Zealand stuff across the Pacific. This is the first year that we were included in that as well, which was pretty cool. Our impact. Where are we? So about $22,000 was raised for various organisations that attended. The Rural Golf on the Thursday, that was $13K. That goes to the Manawatu Rangitikei Rural Support Trust. Sports Awards, just over $6,000 was raised for scholarship education. We also have a kind donor that gives us some cash as well, and a couple of sponsors that are giving us some money to go towards scholarships as well. So we'll be in that, putting those out in August to announce in spring. Last year, 1 from Palmerston North Boys, or 2, and 1 from Fielding. There's about 3 in the region that received those scholarships. The charities that we work with are Companion Pets, Rehoming Standard Breeds, Rehoming Working Dogs, Palmy Rural Fire Service, Manawatu Rangitikei Rural Support, Steam Traction Engine Trust, and the this year Kim Bolton Sculpture Festival as well, which was awesome to have them along. The competition that we run prior to the games in order to try and encourage spending in the city, that's our free trip to Queenstown. And you spend $20 and you go on the draw. This year we restricted the number of entries that you could actually make, so it was 1 per day as opposed to as many as you wanted, and we actually had more entries. So we had 930 entries, which was 27% up on the year prior. We do this with Palmy Bid, and it's our way of trying to give back to the central city businesses, because we do take up some car parks, and we are thinking about how we can minimise the effect on the car parks situation when we are operating. So we are talking about the opportunity to whether or not the car parks behind council here are available for some of the people that are actually doing the activations. The free bus service that we work with Horizons Regional Council, that's growing and growing. When we started this, it was we were talking about 1,000 people using the bus services on the weekends, and now we're up to about 4,300. It's pretty decent growth in the last couple of years. Number of bags of recycling and all those sorts of things continue to rise, and the number of rubbish bags continues to reduce, but there's still a decent number of rubbish that gets produced over the weekend. In terms of the local community and who we work with, there's about 45 locals, volunteers, and then there's about 35 from the Games family. The Games family is Australasian-wide. And then there's about 40 students from local schools, from Palmy Boys, Fielding High, and then on top of that you've got the Girls High kids. This year we introduced the Palmy Farmers Market. Again, this was a new initiative, thanks to Sean and Palmy Proud, and it was pretty much a raving success. The stallholders made some decent cash, which is fantastic, and these are small businesses that have something related back to ag or hort, and that's why they're there, and that's why we look after them. We're just about out of time, aren't we? I think you probably want the last one. Surveys were great. You can see the results there. Economic impact reporting, so direct expenditure. This was put together by an independent company that we employed to do this, and it came out at 3.6 million. Average night stays, 2.77 for competitors and officials, and 2.11 for attendees from out of town. Average daily spend was about $196. You'll see a line there about market view, that's 8.31 million, that's just FPOS payments. It's not actually related to the information that I just gave you before, but that is just the state of the nation in the city on that weekend. And you'll also see in there Plaza foot traffic numbers, again, Janine, not for publication, but it's pretty decent. And if you look at solely their figures for the Church Street entrance, those doors, that's 24% up on weekends before or after. So that just shows you about the engagement level of the square and our primary shopping area. Thank you very much. I won't go through the focus on going forward. We've got a few things to work through. Everything is always changing. You know the economic situation in the country. Thankfully, the primary sector is working its guts out to get us back onto an even keel.
Yeah, and finally, we did have a lot of MPs, 12 MPs across, and that Irish delegation that came from Wellington to be here. It's really put Palmy on the map, and they've actually reached out, pretty keen to do something back in Ireland, so and us to help. So that's pretty cool.
All done. Thank you. Thank you both for taking us through all of that. In some ways, it feels like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. And a huge amount of effort that goes into it. So there's an opportunity for questions if anybody has any. I think you've done a great job of getting into the detail, and obviously we had the presentation in our papers. I did have a question just about the way you're doing the numbers with the cell phones. So did I get, so the way it's structured is you assume 6% of the people there are kids without mobile phones. And you don't think that's right?
We don't think that's right.
I think there was more kids.
So you think there are more kids without cell phones?
That's just our technical sort of ability.
Okay.
But that's real, 37,000 pings, yeah.
So the numbers according to the tech were 37,000, and you...
Yeah,
that a
Luke
good
could
question?
probably explain it better than us, but the formula that the company works on is 6%, and that's what they put across family events across the world. However, we don't believe that we only have 6% in that category. The number of...
We think there are more kids there, they just don't have mobile
We're only talking
phones.
a few thousand people, but we're in the ballpark anyway, so yeah, it's good. What we've always thought, although Steve sometimes said there's 100,000 there, yeah. No.
But we don't really believe Steve.
Yeah.
It's very expansionist. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just off your line of questioning. So does the algorithm that we're using assume that 94% of children have cell phones and only 6% don't, or am I misunderstanding what you're saying?
I can't answer for LiveGauge.
Yeah, want to come down, Luke?
'Cause that sure
We're interested in this
doesn't
new
seem
way
right.
of measuring things, so...
Yeah, it's an interesting measure.
Luke McIndoe, Partnerships Manager for Events and Venues. The model that comes from the company is pretty robust, and they make a lot of assumptions on, there's a few different ones. There are kids who do and don't have phones, there's older people who do and don't have phones, and there are the people like me who have a personal phone and a work phone. So there are, to and fro's both directions. So the 6% is the verified way of accounting for those ups and downs directly from the company, and they informed us to use that as the measure for this type of event, but Rural Games have said that doesn't really cover their assumptions. So my data is reflected in the report as well as Daniel's. So you'll see both of those reflected in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. But before you go, so 6% of what? So you're saying that you take the number, let's say there are 100 kids there, you assume that represents 94% of all children at the event, so you inflate it by an additional 6%. Is that what the mechanism is?
You could read it that way, but the way the LiveGauge, which is the company that puts the model together, that they work on an average across a wide range of assumptions on who does and doesn't have phones. So, you know, one way you could look at it is that, you know, this many kids have a phone, but that's not how the system, it's not that granular, it's just a single ping for a single phone. So it works on the overs and unders on people who have multiple phones, don't have phones, across averages.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, William. Councillor Wood, I think that's interesting. Luke, since this is a new thing and we're using this same system across a range of events, I wonder, would it be possible to request elected members have a little bit of background on it? Or...
I'm happy to provide that. Yeah, we can organise that.
Lovely, thank you. That'd be helpful. Good. Councillor Harpeter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, James and Daniel. Great report. Just one thing, I noticed your comments there about things that people want differently for next time. Is there one thing that you would like to do differently for next year?
There's actually a couple, and we are still working through them, and some of them are around the event and activations that we have, and others are around that engagement feel side of things. So we relish and love the fact that we're free. We also love the fact that we've got so many kids coming in and actually helping us to create and put on this event. We have an accessibility area that is starting to actually make a bit of a difference to how people with accessibility issues feel about our event, and it's something that we've been tweaking and trying to grow, but it's a really difficult thing to get people who have accessibility issues confident enough to come and be in that area inside a busy environment. So it's a nice, safe, easy place for them to be where they're not going to get knocked over by screaming kids. However, to explain that to them is a difficult thing. It's something they want to change. Alongside that, we had 3 sculptors this year instead of one the year prior. We do want to see that community better showcased at the event as well. And so we are in talks with various groups to try and do that. That's a very disparate and rural, like these people live in beach towns all over the country and have no connectivity. There's no sculpture, chainsaw sculpture event in the country. There's nothing for them. And what we're trying to do, but this is a lot like what the Rural Games is all about and why it was set up. Like, we had sports that were dying, and our job is to give them a platform where they can be represented and feel pride.
You're not going to add pigs and chickens and rabbits?
Oh, there's always, we're looking at different, every games is a bit different. There's another event or something like that. So there's a few other things that we're looking at the moment for next year, adding in. So one, the axe throwing, for instance, was new, this last one. So there's always different things, yeah. No 2 games are the same.
Right.
And the number one thing people ask for is more horses, so we really have to get onto that.
Yeah. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you both. That's the end of questions. Thank you for coming in to present today. I will move that the Culture and Sport Committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Wood. Thank you for stepping in there. I'll open that for any comments from the floor. Councillor Harpeter.
Just want to say, absolutely fabulous report and great to go to the Rural Games. It was just an amazing event and great to see all the people that were at the event. And yeah, the Saturday was not as good as the Sunday, but great to see these reports and see it in the way that you have done it. Daniel, it's amazing, so well done to the team. I think that it is a great report and it's great for the city. So well done, James and Daniel. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harpeter. Councillor Mickelad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to also echo some of the comments made by Councillor Harpeter. I also want to thank James and the team for the report, because it's actually a great way of the numbers given to us gives us a good snapshot of what's actually happening on the ground, and also in actually identifying the value that the rural games actually bring to the community as well. And also in marketing our city, just looking at the people that are actually viewing this overseas, you know, from Australia, also the US, which has a growing and increasing viewership as well, is a good way of marketing our city to the world and that sort of thing. So well done, guys, and I look forward to the next one. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Gee, you are being a bit of a pain, but come back, go on, do it.
Right, I felt I should say this. In the year prior, we had a lot of issues with youth issues in the square. This year we had one minor incident.
Oh, that's good.
Absolutely stoked and absolutely super proud of the effort that went into making sure that this is, someone's done something right. So thank you.
Okay, that was a good comment, so I'll let you off with that one. And probably feeds back in quite nicely to the conversation we were just having with Summer Shakespeare about some of the issues that they'd experienced, and maybe there's some learning we can pick up for what's worked with rural games. Yes, agree with colleagues. Thank you for the great event that you put on every year. I think what's always notable is the reach of the media for this event. So it's great for our community, it's great for our locals, but the media reach is what is unique to this event for Palmerston North. And probably like others, I have my fingers crossed for the weather for the weekend, because I know, yes, it drives numbers not being there if it rains, but also we look much better on the telly if the sun is shining. It doesn't matter if it's cold as long as the sun is shining. So that's always good to get a decent run of weather. Sorry about Saturday afternoon. I was really pleased to hear your feedback on the impact for the plaza, even if that was top secret and not to be reported. I thought that was clever to put the farmyard activation in the plaza and then to be able to measure that increased footfall there. It made me wonder if there's a way of measuring the impact on the rest of the CBD. Because anecdotally, we often hear concerns that people come to the rural games and that decreases retail spend across the city that weekend. And I don't know whether that's true or whether that's the anecdata that we often get through the chamber. So I'd be interested if there's anything, maybe working with the bid, you could do on that. But don't feel you need to comment on that right now, Daniel. Thank you. So, well done. Well done from all of us. Thank you. We look forward to a lovely weekend in the sunshine next March. Thank you. Colleagues, I'll ask you to vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes of our meeting on the 26th of March 2025, Part 1 Public. Any questions for clarification on those minutes? No questions. I will move that they be accepted as a true and correct record, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Ask you to vote. Carried unanimously. Moving on to the report response to the recommendations from the Canoe Polo Needs Assessment Papaioa Palmerston North 2025, prepared by RSL Consultants. Invite Anne-Marie Maury, Policy Analyst, and Carl Johnston, General Manager Partnerships from Partnerships and Environments from Sport Manawatu. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Carl, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, Madam Chair and Councillors. This report is really an update for elected members and follows on from the March update we gave on a number of facility planning proposals, including one from the Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club, it's quite a mouthful, who have a desire to build a purpose-built outdoor canoe polo facility, canoe polo. The club is the second largest club in the country and has an overall growth projection. So the needs assessment that was mentioned in that March update has now been finalised and has been attached to your papers. I'd just like to note that Sport New Zealand financially supported the preparation of this work and also provided support to the project steering group. I'd also like to acknowledge the involvement of Rangitane o Manawatu members. We had Warren and Mackenzie on that steering group, so it was a fantastic demonstration of collaboration between the Council, Sport Manawatu, Sport New Zealand and iwi, and joined by a couple of members from the club. So the purpose of this assessment is to provide an independent evaluation of the needs of canoe polo, and it aligns with the Hauraki Tour planning approach which Council endorsed about a year ago. It is an extension of the work that Council undertook a couple of years ago when it looked at aquatic facilities and water-based recreation. And in that much broader recreation needs assessment, it was recommended that the development of a canoe polo facility was explored as a significant investment opportunity in the timeframe of 2027 and beyond, provided there was a supportive feasibility study. So moving on to what the needs assessment for canoe polo recommends, I'll hand over to Carl just to quickly cover that.
Kia ora, councillors. So there was a few challenges that were identified as part of this needs assessment. Currently they're utilising the Hokowhiru Lagoon. Some of the major issues that they have are the impacts with the neighbours, the neighbouring properties. Officers are dealing with a number of concerns in that aspect. Water depth and also water quality is a bit of an issue with that aspect as well. So one of the key recommendations that came in the long term was to develop a purpose-built forecourt facility to meet the local demand and to support events, and also to carry out further assessment into that space. The recommendation to do a location assessment was carried out, so a high-level one was initially carried out with 22 identified sites across the city. This was whittled down to 6 that would have been suitable to carry on. This can be carried out as part of the feasibility study, or it can be a separate study themselves to identify a particular site. 2 of these sites are on educational sites and 3 are on publicly owned council land, with a single privately owned site as well, which could potentially work. The aim of carrying out the site assessment will feed into the feasibility study and explore into more detail how it'll work logistically. These assessments to ensure robust decision making is carried out. These assets are a long-term investment, and just need to make sure that they're fit for purpose in the correct location and fit for the future. Anything else, Emma?
Thanks, Carl. Just moving to our recommendation is really, as I said, an update for elected members as a result of this piece of work, and it's really just to inform the future planning stages that will prepare the council for any future decisions on canoe polo facilities in the city, including any decisions about any financial contributions that it chooses to make. There are no generic operational or capital budgets allocated to advance the recommendation made in this report today. But yeah, that could come in the future. And I suppose in that regard, the completion of the next stage of work, which would be a feasibility study, potentially within the next financial year, would align with the next LTP cycle, with any funding considerations made should the new facility be proven to be feasible. I'd just like to add that the Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club has indicated that they may be able to access funding or self-fund the future stages of work, being the feasibility study. So they're obviously very keen to keep advancing work on this proposal in the hope that it will assist some decisions to be made for the future. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anne-Marie and Carl, for jogging us through that and noting that this is to inform future decisions. There are no budgets attached to it. There's potential for external funding to progress to next stages. So any questions? Councillor Wood, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't think I'd be the only one, but anyway. A couple of questions from me. So on page 8 of the needs assessments, this is an item 9 attachment 1 for councillors, it says under point 5, as you mentioned, that a detailed site assessment would be undertaken or would be suggested to be undertaken prior to a feasibility study. You suggested that could be done as part of a feasibility study. What is the, it feels to me listening to this report, they might do it, we might do it, somebody else might do it. What's the actual next step here?
I suppose there's two ways you could look at it. You could look at that as a discrete piece of work. It's really just to narrow down to 1 or 2 sites rather than taking 22 or 6 or whatever number of potential sites. That piece of work, which could be done as part of a feasibility study or could be done on its own, just, I suppose, sets the feasibility study up to just focus on 1 or 2 sites rather than a number of sites.
Okay. Is there a reason Manawatu, Kiwi Canoe Polo and RSL consultants aren't here with us today, or is it just availability, or were they not invited?
The club was certainly made aware of the presentation today. I think just they are both, both the 2 people that we have been liaising with have jobs, but they are following along, hopefully online. And RSL weren't invited to present as part of the contract that we had with them.
Okay. Do we know how the Kiwi Canoe Polo Club feel about this feasibility study? Are they happy with the direction that it sets? Are they unhappy?
Yeah, initial feedback that we've received from the 2 groups that we've been working with is they're very happy with the proposal. To continue or expand on that, the feasibility study, so we'll be working with, potentially working with lotteries to fund the next stage into that. So yeah, that will be coming from there as a contribution to progress the project.
Great. And so what point, so you were saying, Anne-Marie, regarding the long-term plan, that's still a couple of years before you be into the new budget, or a year and a bit before you be into the new budget for that. So when you say that work could start in the next financial year, is that if the Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club can access funding, they would just go ahead and start it, and if they can't, then we'd look at LTP funding?
Yes, that's a possibility, and that's certainly how we have, or council has contributed to processes like this from other proponent-driven requests, like, for example, the Bowl Centre and also the Central Football's proposal for an artificial turf. So council has, in some cases, supported proponent groups. I mean, it's quite difficult, I think, for these groups to access funding, or there's a bit of a process. So in the event that Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club weren't able to access funding, there could be a request back to the council to help contribute to the cost of that work.
Right. And my last question was on, it's page 51 of the needs assessment, or page 55 of attachment 1 for councillors. There's a chart on the summary of second stage assessments, and there's a line there that says equitable, and all of the 3 options identified have a cross next to it. I couldn't find in the later attachments on the risks and benefits of each of these locations any mention of, and maybe I've missed it, any mention of what that's, is it equitable for the club? Is it equitable in a more wider social context? What does that mean? Equitable for the neighbours of the property?
Sorry, just to clarify, is that the 11.3.1 table that you're looking at? Yep. Okay. The items across the top of that table in the header row are all of the principles in the hierarchy tour plan. So the consultants have used those principles of the plan to make an assessment against each of those options. So, yeah, sorry, without referring to that plan, I'd have to look at what equitable is referring to, but I'm assuming that means that the facilities are made available for a wide cross-section of the community.
Okay, that's, we'll be interested in that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Harberter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just a couple of questions. So the difference between a needs assessment and a feasibility?
A needs assessment has a high level assessment on how it can work across the city. The feasibility is more of a detailed look down into a particular site and whether it is feasible, I suppose.
So we've got the needs assessment now, we now know they need it, is that right?
And then the next stage would be moving into a site-specific, and that's where those 5 or 6 sites were. We'll do an initial assessment over those top sites. If there's 2 that are clear winners, then we would focus on those 2 and progress the feasibility from that space.
Okay, so something like the Pacifica Hub, did that have a needs assessment and a feasibility? And did the funding come from somewhere to get those things done?
I would have to check, but I understand that there was a level of analysis or planning and investigation done for that facility. I'd just like to draw your attention to the figure in the report, figure 1, which does show the different things that are covered under each phase of work. So yeah, the needs assessment, very much, it's kind of the lead-in to the feasibility study. So it's all about, I suppose, the club or the proponent group often has a view about what is needed. So the needs assessment really just sort of quantifies that demand, looks at the supply, what already we have, and looks at the options to understand how those needs could be met. So it may not be that a new facility is required. The feasibility then goes on to take that work further in terms of assessing those options, coming up with a preferred option and looking really, I suppose, closely at those capital and operating costs and any governance and management arrangements that need to be made to, I suppose, future-proof the sustainability of the facility.
So every building or facility has the same process happen to it?
My understanding is that there has been some work done that sort of came off the Community Places report, but I'd have to probably seek guidance from our other group that probably, I don't think Danelle's here today, but whether there's anyone else from management that may be able to help answer that.
I'll leave it, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. I think it is, the CE is going to comment.
Through the Chair, generally that's the process that we would follow, make sure that we've got good needs assessment and that feasibility is appropriate. We did that for Pacifica Hub and those other projects for them to progress.
Thank you for the clarification. My question isn't so much about the recommendation, it's more about the consequences of this process. So as you note in your report, there have been neighbour complaints and concerns raised, and as a result of that we decided not to have a fourth court on the lagoon. I'm also aware we're getting an increasing number of parking related concerns when we have large canoe polo events down at the lagoon. So I wanted to seek a comment if I could, so maybe it's not you two, maybe it's a Kathy kind of question, about how we're going to manage that pressure on this sports field while we're continuing to look at future options.
Kathy Dever-Todd, Manager Parks Reserves. So we have a very good relationship with the Canoe Club that hold the lease at the chalet and also the Canoe Polo fraternity. Some of the activities on the lagoon are formal and organised events, and generally we know about them and we can work quite closely with them through our events team to manage that activity. Where we have had some ongoing issues, it has been informal use of the lagoon. Under our generic policy reserve management plan that you're going to look at shortly, those are the sorts of rules and provisions that we can include alongside district plan, using the district plan provisions to try and manage that informal activity. But ultimately, it is really through our relationship with the clubs to make their members aware of the issues. Certainly when we've had tournaments, the club has been more than willing to look at the ways in which they can mitigate the impact on the neighbours.
Thank you for that, Kathy. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you aware there were plans 20 plus years ago for a lake at the Country with housing, and it wasn't supported by council?
Yes, I was aware. I think I was around at council at the time.
Okay, thank you.
To be clear, I don't think anybody's suggesting a lake. Thank you. There are no further questions. I will move that the committee notes the recommendations of the Canoe Polo Needs Assessment Papaoi Palmerston North 2025 be used to inform future assessment stages and advice on the provision of canoe polo facilities in the city. Seek a seconder for that. Councillor Meehan, thank you. I'll open that for any comments. I did just want to say that, as Carter has alluded to, we often have a lot to learn in the community space from things that have been successful in the sports space. For example, we moved to a sector lead arrangement for strategic priority grant recipients based on the very successful relationship that the council has with Sport Manawatu. So certainly it would be interesting to look in the community space at the model that we have now for how we work through the need for regional facilities. But I think most of the facilities that were being referred to in that previous conversation were local community facilities where we certainly wouldn't want to see an increasing amount of paperwork come in behind them, although noting that we did receive those reports to community committee about the needs assessment and suitability of locations for something like the Pacifica Hub. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to speak briefly to say, although this is a good report, it is a long report in a stage at the start of a long process. And if I had known, certainly when I approved or voted for the Hiraki Tour program, that this was going to be the sort of process we were putting our volunteer community clubs through, I probably wouldn't have voted for it. And so I'll give serious consideration if I'm here at the next term of council, bringing a notice of motion that we withdraw from the plan and develop a different way of going through this. Because if you're Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo looking at this, we've now spent $30,000 doing the feasibility report, and you're now facing down the barrel of doing a detailed assessment of the sites, then paying for a feasibility study, then paying for a business case before we get to the stage that we can actually do anything. In the time costs go up, in the time people change, in the time all sorts of things can happen. I would much rather that we decide. I sometimes feel in council that we've built these processes around us to prevent us from making decisions, so that we have 10 different reports that tell us it's a good idea before we do what we're going to do anyway. And I look at this and go, this report has told me that the Hokowhiru Lagoon is not an appropriate long-term site to keep canoe polo at. I feel like it would be fair to say most of us already knew that. The demand for that's growing. We know that from the reports from the club, we know that from presentations we get in the chamber and the excellent international representation we get from Manawatu Canoe Polo. And so this report says, well, we should look at building something somewhere else. I agree. And so I would much rather, as a process, council then made the decision and said, we want to support Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo, we want to identify a site to build it on, go and assess that site and then build it, put together a funding plan and go for it, rather than putting them through another 3 stages of processes that they have to get through at expense of the club, at huge cost to them, where we still are sort of spinning our wheels before we make progress. And I'm not, to be clear, having a go at our officers or at Sport Manawatu or at anybody else. They've done what the process says they should do, and so you're doing a good job of implementing what you're supposed to implement. I just question whether or not this is an effective way of getting a good result. If as council we believe we want this to happen, then we should just make the decision, put together a funding plan and do it. So it'll be an interesting discussion going forward, but I hope Kiwi Canoe Polo can get the funds together to advance us to the next stage, because it would be a shame to see it die here.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Wood said there. But we have talked about red tape and processes for some time around the table. Councillor Arnott made a mention about a lagoon being built, and I just thought I'd just drop it in because it reminded me of when I first got on council some time ago. I made a suggestion to the mayor at that time that we should look at a lagoon out of Walker's Road that doesn't need building, it's already there. And it was 1.2 million at the time, and we could have done quite some amazing things about it, but I got laughed out of the room at that time. So just sometimes we need to have a bit of forward thinking.
You can support Councillor Wood's notice of motion. Councillor Harpeter.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't going to comment, but I thought I would. When I was the chair of sport, I also had a son who played canoe polo, so I was very involved with canoe polo, and he did represent New Zealand, and he did go into the lagoon, so I know all about the lagoon and the unhealthiness of the lagoon. But in saying that, I do echo what Councillor Wood has said. I do feel like we have put a lot of red tape around canoe polo and a lot of time around this, and I do feel like, I'm not beating up the officers at all, it is more about feeling like we've just put a handbrake on them completely. And I was only asking about the Pacifica situation because I feel like in some projects we just let them go forward, in other projects we pull them back about 10 steps, and it's so hard to watch. It's so hard for some codes to watch them being pulled backwards rather than being pushed forward. And this is a code that we've pulled back, and I just feel sorry for them.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I echo colleagues' frustrations. And yes, 20 odd years ago, this council was offered a free facility, multi-water sport, and here we go, and it's potentially going to cost big dollars. So, disappointing, and that, 20 plus years later, people are still paddling in poo. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I got that.
You found me. Look, the previous comments there, look, seriously, this is actually about fairness and equitable treatment of all codes in terms of the facilities that they desire. So there has to be a process, it has to be fair, it has to be equitable, and yep, go fill your boots if you want to try and overturn it for the next term, but the reality is that this is the appropriate way of going about it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I did signal this the last time that it came to us in committee, but just do have frustration with the multi-layered assessment approach. And I pointed out last time that before we'd even got to this point, we'd had the Manawatu Wanganui sports facilities plan, and then the regional spaces and places plan, and then the Palmerston North specific review within that, and then the aquatic needs assessment in 2023, and then we've had our specific canoe polo draft needs assessment now, and the review of the result of that assessment is that we now require further assessments, and that is where I think yes, I agree, the process in investing a lot of money in new facilities does need to be very robust, and the case needs to be well made, but I just think that it has been well made and that it is hard for these codes to navigate and to maintain their momentum if we've got a kind of death by process in this type of situation. When, by the other hand, if codes do come to us and say, we've got a plan, we've got funding in place, or we've got a fundraising plan in place and we're ready to push go on that, we can then contribute funds to that through a separate budget line, and they appear to be more adept and more timely at getting new facilities built than we are, and it seems like there's a sort of fast track process if that code is ready to go, and if that code isn't ready to go and they're not able to raise funds in the same manner or have the same resourcing behind them, then they get stuck in our kind of quagmire process, and that doesn't feel fair and equitable to me.
Thank you. That has got through the list. I'm not surprised by any of the comments. I think this has been well traversed as we've stepped through signing off these different levels of plans. I'm sure officers are noting that that continues to be a concern for elected members. I would just say that I'd have more sympathy for this if we were talking about local facilities, but we're not. We're talking about regional facilities. And so it's important that we align our decision making with our regional colleagues, because otherwise Palmerston North will pay for everything. We will be the only place that funds regional facilities. And I don't think any of us, however gung-ho we are with the notice of motion, want to be funding every regional facility that somebody thinks is a good idea. There has to be a way of working through this process fairly and equitably, as Councillor Zabellin said. And in the absence of anything else, the process we have in front of us is the best way of achieving that. So thank you for bringing the report, Anne-Marie and Carl. Thank you for the work that's going on with Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club. I'm really encouraged that they want to fund the next part of this. I think actually we're the custodians of public money. If a code has the money, has the funding lined up, has the land, wants to deliver it and is looking for council to give them the civic tick of honour, then that is a very different proposition to a regional facility being developed on public land with public money, and there is a higher bar for us allowing that funding. So I might not be comfortable with the level of paperwork, but I am comfortable with the principles that underpin it, and I'd ask for your support for this. Is 12 votes in favour and 1 against. Is that everyone? Our next item on the agenda is the Draft General Policy Reserve Management Plan. I'll invite Kathy Deaver-Todd, Manager Parks and Reserves, and Phillips, Activities Manager Parks, to present that report. Nice to see you both keeping going after your early start this morning. Well done.
Thank you, elected members. I'm absolutely delighted to bring this draft generic policy in front of you today. The reason being that I have worked for this council for many years, and many of the policies and issues and matters included within this policy are things that we've had to repeat and grapple and make decisions over many, many times over the years, because we don't have them in one consolidated document. This generic policy has been prepared under the provisions of the Reserves Act. Now, the Reserves Act is a 1977 Act. It's a very old Act, well before the RMA came out and well before the changes to the Local Government Act. However, whilst those other acts give better provision for some of the matters that are contained in this generic reserve management policy, it still behoves council that we do need to follow the Reserves Act. And the process at the moment is a reserve management plan. The advantages, obviously, of council adopting a reserve management plan have been covered in previous reports, but let me just raise a couple of matters for you. One of them is that provision 54(1)(a) of the Act makes provision that where we've got a management plan in place that has been approved, and that a licence is in conformity with that and contemplated in that management plan, council is not required to consult with the public under the provisions of the Reserves Act. That doesn't mean that you couldn't consult under the provisions of the Local Government Act or in any way you wished, but then we move away from that, which means when we've had various papers come before our committees looking at leases that are under the same terms and conditions with an entity that we have been leasing to for many years, we've had to follow the Reserves Act. In the future, you can make that decision. I'll draw your attention also to the community gardens and recently the permit process that we put in place. This generic policy includes that so that we meet the conditions of the Reserves Act when we're issuing permits. The main intention of the policy and how we've attempted to draft it as officers is to make it simpler for people to understand how we manage and administer our reserves, and simpler in terms of processes for us to make consistent and transparent decisions. There are a number of varying topics covered in this generic reserve management plan. So I just want to address the fact that at the early stage we didn't get a lot of input or feedback into the plan and why that may be. It's very difficult, the Reserves Act is a bit difficult to understand, and whilst on our consultation online we talked to people about that we want to make things simpler, we only had a series of topics. We didn't have a draft plan out there, so people commented on what they knew. Certainly the way we've prepared this now allows people to make a comment on a particular matter that is of interest to them. And we suspect that during the submission process, we were probably not going to get people that are going to comment on the document as a whole, but we're probably going to get feedback on individual matters. And that allows us then to bring that back to council and have discussion about whether that policy setting is correct or whether we may have left something out. So we're asking you today to adopt the draft policy for consultation with the community. Under the Reserves Act, that would be a process of 2 months. And if we are able to hear the submitters during one of our committee meetings, and then that will give us time to then work through the issues as time allows.
Thank you both. Question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kathy and Aaron, for your work to get this far. A couple questions. I couldn't find, just in reading through this, I couldn't find a map or a list of all the reserves that this seeks to relate to. Is that going to be provided alongside or within this document to the community?
So councillors, if you recall, we've got a number of reserve management plans, and the other complementary plan to this is the Omnibus Reserve Management Plan, and that is to be divided into sections. We've started work on that document. The reserves that are covered under each section of that will be listed out. So in the sports ground section, there will be the sports fields in which this relates to. This policy covers all of our reserves and parks, including those that are not necessarily classified under the Reserves Act. It is our general approach. And then as we drill down into an individual plan or the omnibus plan, it will talk about the individual parks or reserves that those rules apply to.
Thanks. So I'm taking it the answer is no, there's no map.
Not on this document, but it will be attached to the other reserve management plans.
So for a member of the community that may or may not want to have input into this process and might have something that they just see as kind of a bit of vacant land next to them, and they may or may not realize it's a reserve or something that falls into this space, like, what's kind of there to trigger them to think, hey, actually this might relate to me because I walk my dog there or whatever it is?
That's a very good point you raise, and that's something that we certainly can look at in the engagement and consultation material that we provide along this. This is a very formal document. We obviously have on our website a list of all the parks and reserves that we have, but we can certainly work with our comms team to make sure that that is clearer. We have brought before you previously a report that covered reserves that we had that weren't classified, and that's certainly not a comprehensive list. Part of the problem we had with our parks and reserves is that a number of them are not in one single title. So the common name, people might know it as a reserve, but it may be classified or made up of a number of parcels. But certainly we can provide a list of all of the commonly understood or known reserves or parks, or refer them to our map, which is online, which covers all of those things.
Great, thank you. The other general question is just around referring to iwi as partners, which is quite clear in there, but I couldn't find a reference to it actually identifying iwi as treaty partners, and I just wondered if that was an intentional approach to level up all partners, or if there is a possibility to identify iwi as treaty partners.
So we've worked very closely with Rangatane Manawatu on the preparation of this document, and most of the wording within the document, within the section that refers to iwi o rangatahi, has been wording that has been prepared by rangatahi themselves. And the final document, rangatahi have not raised any changes or any concerns that they wanted to this, so they have worked through this draft document with us.
Great, thank you. Two specific questions around areas. One is section 4, the review and monitoring section. It does make reference to review, but I didn't really see anything in there tangible in terms of monitoring and reporting back of that monitoring in any way. Could you just help us understand what's planned?
Sorry, can I ask you for a page reference?
Yeah, section 4 being page 5 of the draft, or 48 of the agenda.
No, there is nothing in there in terms of monitoring. That's certainly something that we can look at in the adoption of the final document.
Thanks. Just, I guess, interested in terms of going to the community with our best intent, the wisdom of leaving that blank now versus signaling something specific around monitoring that might then attract some views on the community of whether they needed to see more or less monitoring?
I guess the thing about monitoring a policy is somewhat different to monitoring a plan, and this is a generic policy reserve management plan. And what I mean by that is we could say, well, actually, there's some things we can measure. So we've had this many requests or this many complaints about people encroaching on our land, and there's some things in there that we can't really easily monitor. So I don't think it's something that we could easily put a plan together and say we're going to do it in a certain way. Some of the information that we already provide back through other reports is specific to matters like shades and tree planting, and those are things that you ask about in sports grounds, and some things are not subject to general reporting but may come through an elected member's report, for example. So I think that's something that we would have to take away and give consideration to, and see what we currently measure and how we might do that.
Thanks, understood. Would it be reasonable, though, to commit to at least a tempo of monitoring, to say there's going to be annual monitoring or 3-yearly monitoring or something like that, to give the community some sense of expectation of what might come out of this policy/plan?
I'm not sure that I can answer that. I guess that is something for elected members to make a decision on.
Thank you. And finally, Madam Chair, just on section 8, which is around dogs, and we can give you a page reference. Page 56 of the agenda, 13 of the draft. It kind of zooms in quite quickly to a very specific matter around on or off leash. Rather than kind of going to a more generic, responsible ownership kind of statement, which would include a number of things, including managing on-off leash, picking up after waste, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just wondering why we kind of zoomed into the on-off leash rather than keeping a higher level around responsible ownership.
That is because council has a dog control bylaw. So any place that we have got a bylaw or a policy of council, we refer that to give council the ability to vary that or to make rules around that without us having to revisit through the Reserves Act process a major amendment to the document. So as much as we can, we've tried to leave that flexibility with council by leaving it with your policies and bylaws. So that's the only reason.
Thanks. So I guess then I'm trying to understand why that second sentence is even, well, to some extent even why anything's in here. But that second sentence that says check the bylaw, but only says check the bylaw for on-off leash rather than check the bylaw full stop for all the matters that relate to responsible ownership.
Again, that's a minor amendment that could be made at this stage. There was no intention behind only calling it off the leash.
Excellent, that's fantastic. Thanks, Madam Chair. That is questions and answers for me. I may have a couple minor amendments just to refer through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you both for a very detailed and hefty plan. My questions were a bit about the feedback that were received, and on page 40, just underneath the pie graph there, paragraph 3.14, it says that 69% of the responses were not in relation to reserve management concerns or comments, and that they were sort of out of scope, mainly on maintenance and development. And I was wondering whether or not we still take on board that feedback that we've received for other purposes, you know, such as informing our work plans or asset management plans as feedback about levels of service. Do we lose it just because it's out of scope, or are we able to funnel it somehow where it is applicable?
Yeah, absolutely. We fell it into our ongoing maintenance and development, so those comments have already been passed on to our operational team. Just like the customer service requests that come in, we include all data from our resident survey comments, from our parks user surveys, into our development of our work programs. And if it's something that can be fixed straight away, we fix it straight away. Otherwise, we incorporate it into the asset planning process.
Brilliant, thank you. Were there any issues that were raised in the engagement that we've done that were in scope that we have made amendments to in the draft? Was there anything that was able to be picked up and incorporated, or was the majority of it out of scope?
The majority of comments that were made that were in scope were matters that we had already considered and were things that we raised with the councillors during the workshop that have been incorporated into the draft.
Great, thank you. Page 56, at policy 9.5, it's talking about fencing and encroachment, and that was something that came up in that engagement as well. I was wondering whether that included or addressed the trees encroaching on sports turfs that got raised in the workshops, because they've referred to some red tape and making it very difficult to sort of deal with. And I wondered, is there a discrepancy between what we might require a landowner to do versus how responsive we might be in dealing with that kind of situation?
I must confess, councillors, I am the red tape, and so I have a dual role. I'm protecting the trees of the city. The reference there is in reference to council-owned trees and where they're leasing land from us. So in the particular case here, hockey turfs and tennis courts that are close to existing trees, and we strike a balance between maintaining and looking after those trees on behalf of the city and the needs of the users. They have to go through a process where they get approved for pruning. They can't just prune them. That's fair enough. We don't want our trees and our parks destroyed.
And thank you. And so then the other side to that element is when we require landowners to deal with tree encroachment, is that on their property and it's encroaching our fence lines, or?
No, under the provisions of the Fencing Act, we are entitled to prune trees back to the boundary. The people who have the tree on the other side aren't required to prune it back to the boundary. It's
on us.
It's on us. Okay. And vice versa.
Great, thank you. My other question was on dogs as well. It just seemed that, given that was quite a key focus in the feedback, it seemed like we'd been quite brief with what we'd described there, but I think that's been well covered. But I did wonder whether or not we could incorporate, rather than just go check the bylaw, whether we could incorporate some key aspects that someone might be looking for if they were treating this as a one-stop shop for what can I do on a reserve.
Certainly we could, and we could, either it was a minor amendment now or waited for the public feedback to come in. Certainly the public feedback we get on dogs is a bit like the feedback you got on the Linklater Reserve.
Yeah.
It is in two camps, and it's about what we include here and what is in that bylaw that still leaves that decision making for council to include reserves in the different areas within the bylaw. Provision. I guess the thing here is some of our reserves are you can't have dogs on, and some of the reserves are, dogs off the lead, and this is a generic reserve policy, and that's why we've referred to the bylaw for those specific areas.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I'm just referring to Schedule 1 in the document, which is on page 68 of our agenda. The list of in terms of the leases. So am I correct to understand that we would no longer get those lease renewal requests that come through, like following this document, if this is implemented? Anything on this list would no longer come as a renew? There'd be no public notification of any renewal to lease?
Answering the first question, under the provisions of the Reserves Act, officers can't renew a recreation lease. It must come to council, it must be a council resolution. So you would still get the renewal of the lease come to council, but it wouldn't come through twice. So it wouldn't come through where, please allow us to consult on it, here's the results of the consultation hearings. It would be one report with the request from the group, and then council could decide at that stage whether to renew the lease or not, or to go out for consultation if they wish to.
Okay, so, okay, thank you. And in terms of the, it says if the conditions are considered by the council to be more than minor. So if there was a change of lease cost, would that be minor or more than minor?
No, because the lease costs are covered under another policy of council. So we always charge based around the policy setting of council. So the main changes that would be minor is a change of use. So a requirement may be to sublease, or a significant change in the area they wanted to lease.
Okay, and which is the policy that guides is it the revenue and financing policy, or is there which is the policy that determines the cost for lease?
Yes, support and funding policy.
So, oh, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. That is all the questions. So you'll see there are an additional recommendation has come in from Councillor Barrett, seconded by Councillor Harpiter, that the draft Palmerston North City Council General Policy Reserve Management Plan be amended as follows. Amend Section 4 monitoring to include a 3-yearly monitoring report to council or relevant committee. Amend Section 8 to refer to responsible ownership components of the bylaw. I'll come to you to speak to those, Councillor Barrett. Would you also be happy to move the substantive recommendation? We can take all of those together. I don't see this as being hugely controversial. Okay, over to you, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen, Madam Chair, and to officers for the work to this far. And it's actually quite impressive to see the scope and breadth of what's in this policy draft to go to the community for consultation. I think it's very useful to get community views on this. I'm sure people will be happy to support. The two additional recommendations are, in my view, quite minor, but I think worth highlighting. One is to ensure that there is a intent signaled at the start to have a formal monitoring mechanism in there, so that the community can react to that in terms of whether they think that tempo is right or not. I think the officers are quite right. The exact how that monitoring would be done is something to be worked through in time, but I think a commitment to a tempo is appropriate, so that's what's signaled there. And secondly is just to lift the gaze a little bit in terms of the dog section, and note Councillor Zabellan's questions reflecting there as well. I think kind of raising it away from just one specific issue of on-off leash to a higher level kind of focus around responsible ownership and the components thereof would be two helpful minor adjustments to this before we take it to the community, and the council next has an opportunity to reflect on this. So I'd ask for your support across the board. Thank you.
I don't see zero risk of that. Okay, advice is we need to take them separately in case this fails. I see zero risk of that, but we'll go with it. No further comments. I'll ask you to vote on 2. I have already read them out. That's passed with 12 votes in favour. Has somebody missed a vote? I was planning to, but advice was not to. Shall we take the vote again? Can we take the vote again, please? Thirteen votes in favour, thank you. And now to the first recommendation, which is to adopt the draft for consultation. Ask you to vote on that. Carried unanimously, thank you. Next item on the agenda, the draft Kahutarawa Outdoor Recreation Plan, or CORP, as it's called in its report. We're welcoming back Kathy Deaver-Todd and Aaron Phillips for this report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councillors. Quite a little bit like the last item, we're a little bit proud to bring this one forward, although it's been a little while coming, with a bit of stopping and starting, but it essentially follows on from the successful 2008 Kahutarawa Outdoor Recreation Plan. The review got a bit interrupted, but we're here now and proud to take it out to the community. The reviewed plan simplifies the 2008 plan quite significantly. At the time that was a new plan and it involved lots of new activities and new works, but we've been running along pretty well for 10 years and it's largely a business as usual plan. There's not a lot of new things proposed in it, but there are some development opportunities identified through some engagement, early engagement with some of the stakeholders. We do note that I guess the major change is the exclusion of the road from the scope of the plan. Those councillors who have been at the table for a while will recall that the upgrade of the road has been considered a number of times. Not a priority in the wider work program for roading, and in an effort to avoid unrealistic expectations around the road, we've excluded it from the plan. If there were to be any future upgrades of the roading, that will be considered through the roading asset management plan and your long-term plan deliberations. We did note, though, there has been an awful lot of work on the road recently through your emergency works budgets, and the order of $1 million has been spent on it in various ways over the recent times. So it's not that you haven't been spending money in that space, it's just been a little bit reactionary. But we're hoping that you're comfortable with the draft plan and you're happy for us to take that out to consultation, and we'll see what the community think.
Thank you both. Question from, oops, hold on, pressed the wrong thing, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. A fairly minor question, but page 93 in the policy 5.9.1 around short stay camping, it says for no longer than 2 consecutive nights in any 6-month period. I'm just trying to understand, does that mean a maximum of 2 nights in a 6-month period, or is it just if someone goes for one? I'm trying to understand if that's just 2, or if it's just consecutive, 2 consecutive. What are the limitations around that? It's not entirely clear to me.
It is a clumsy wording, but the purpose was we had a couple of issues with people camping in the Kahutarawa Reserve in particular in the past, and camping there for an extended period in manners that weren't very made other users of the reserve uncomfortable. The principle behind the couple of nights is that we're really catering to the Te Araroa walkers, and we wanted to give them, if for some reason they wanted to stay more than 1 night, we thought 2 would be okay. But we're trying to kind of strike a balance between the Te Araroa walkers being able to stop and have a night or 2, and ending up with sort of long stay camping that isn't, those reserves really aren't set up for that. There's no potable water, there's no, while we have toilet facilities, we don't have things that suit long-term camping. So 2 nights, and the 6-month period manages any other users who are not Te Araroa walkers camping. We don't mind if you pop up there for a night or 2, but we We don't want it to turn into more than a fully fledged campground approach.
So if someone camped there for a night or two, they couldn't come back 2 months or 3 months later?
Yeah, in a 6-month period, yeah. So
And so how's that monitored or policed?
it's really, if I'm honest, it's up to the residents let us know what's going on, and they'll say someone's been in there for 3 or 4 nights and looks to me like they're setting up camp for a while, and we'll go and talk to them. We have a similar policy at the Ashurst domain for the campground, where there's a maximum number of nights of stay in a period to avoid it turning into
And is that a 30-day period or is it a 6-month?
I'd have to check, but I'm not familiar with the exact clause, but it's a similar structure, certain number of nights in a certain period.
And
I
is
think
this,
it might be 3-month period.
is this the same or different to the current limitations?
We've got slightly longer, well, officially there was no camping in the last plan. Practically speaking, Te Araroa Trail got established after the last plan was written, and people have been camping, but we've been limiting it to 3 nights at the moment. Well, we think 2 works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you think that's clear enough, or do you think wording could make it clearer to say a maximum of 2 nights in a 6-month period? Because the consecutive nights confuses it a little bit.
Oh, I could go away and have a look at that wording.
Yeah.
If the council were comfortable that there was a minor alteration, we'll have a look at that wording and see if we can make it a little bit easier to understand.
Thank you.
Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question was about the road being out of scope and that being one of the key community interest areas and feedback, and whether or not, or to what extent we communicate or align with the plans when it comes through council for roading. Do we communicate with that community when the opportunities are to advocate for that roadwork to happen?
I wasn't directly involved with the last couple of iterations of considerations of the road, but I know the roading team and the parks team were involved in those, and there was forums with the local community. I can't say whether we communicated back to advocate, if they wish to advocate for change through the LTP, but certainly we can make them aware of that through this process, that if they'd like to leave sea level surface increase, make a submission to your 10-year plan budgeting processes.
Great, thank you.
We'll take that on board.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks again, Kathy and Aaron. Just, the report was interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that it was the first time I discovered that Arapuki was just private land and not a reserve. And I just wondered about the kind of wisdom of just keeping it as a parcel of private land versus contemplating a reserve designation that presumably would give it a higher standard of protection over time.
The Reserves Act, as I've said earlier, is a very old act, and it was intended at the time to be the protection for the community that a public reserve would stay as a reserve. There are enough other provisions within council now that have come into being since the Local Government Act amendments in 2002 that gets council to put in place a list of strategic assets. As a collection, and certainly how you would consult and deal with that with the community. So probably putting that piece aside, whether the land will be lost or sold or whatever, the only other advantages of bringing it under the Reserves Act are the things that we have talked about in the policy in the past, but also when the land came across to us, it came out of forest. And it didn't really have a whole lot of recreational or reserve amenities, and so at that time it probably wasn't, something you consider reserve. As it develops, that's certainly something that we could include, even possibly in the consultation of whether the community want it to be brought under the Reserves Act. There are advantages and disadvantages. However, there is a lot of other legislative protection for the site as it is currently.
Thanks. Yeah, another aspect that comes to mind is the $2 million of revenue that comes off of the wind farm, which I understand is constrained to only be spent on reserves. Is that correct?
It is, but council doesn't spend that money on a particular reserve. The council puts that money back into its city reserves, which are which are our major reserves, and our expenditure on our city reserves well exceeds that 2 million. So money for Arapuki comes in other ways by that money being diverted, you know, away from rates in the city reserves, and frees up more money. So. I don't know that that's probably a reason in its own right. It would be if the money that we got off the wind farm exceeded our expenditure and we wanted to look at what else we could spend it on.
Thank you. That's helpful. The other area of question I had was just around page 92, 5.3.2, which is around the track maintenance standards, and it says that basically tracks are maintained to dock standards, and I just wondered which dock standards, noting there's quite a range of standards that dock has for different track types.
Backcountry.
Thanks. Could that be just clarified in the document so that it's clear for people? And is that a change of practice, or is that just continuing what we've already done?
No, that's the existing practice. That was the standard we adopted when we upgraded the sledge track.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kathy and Aaron. Just with regards to page 99, where it talks about animal pest control targets, I noticed, well, this is on the backdrop of last week, we talked about something that had come up about the deers, you know, decimating the undergrowth in Tararua and Ruahine. And I noticed that although there are controlled targets, it's quite, there's very little noted about the red deer. And I just wanted to know, how do we monitor these pests? Do we have an external group, or is it an internal group who look after that? Thank you.
Yes, so we, council engages a pest control contractor. He has worked up in that area for a number of decades, so has a good understanding of the populations. He obviously takes a head count of what they cull and monitors the damage. He is also our contractor that monitors a number of other things up in the reserve, including our muscelids and what's in our traps. And he has a team up there all the time. So we get regular feedback from Daniel on what's happening up there in the numbers. Certainly it was very difficult coming out of COVID. We were one of the only councils in New Zealand that continued to cull red deer during COVID, but obviously the numbers do increase if we have a good season. But Daniel's always up there culling for us and monitoring.
Thank you. The other thing, probably picking up on what Councillor Barrett said, so just for clarification, the $2 million that we get generated from the windmills, that goes into our operational funds and is tagged to the in-city reserves.
No, so what happens is we have, within the activities of council, the revenue is counted as revenue within city reserves. Those are our destination reserves, like the Esplanade Linklater Memorial Park, and we also have costs in that area, but the revenue is accounted for in city reserves under the active community.
Thank you both very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Fire. That brings us to the end of questions. So I'll move that the committee adopt the draft Kutarawa Outdoor Recreation Plan 2025 for public consultation. Seek a seconder for that. Councillor Mann, thank you. Open that for any comments. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly 2008 is a while in the rearview mirror, so it's good to get this back out in front of the community, and a heck of a lot has changed in that space since 2008 when you think about the amount of community sweat equity that's gone into that, as well as public money, and as well as the opportunities that are there. I am interested in this question of whether or not Arapuki remains a private parcel of land, or whether we do ask the community whether they would like to see an additional protection status for it around becoming a reserve. I note the officer's response that there's other means of protection, that it is named in our LTP, et cetera, but just putting it to the room that if there was somebody that was comfortable to second bringing in a question into this consultation of asking the community the simple question of, should this in future become a reserve or not, I would be interested in exploring that question with the community, because it is something that has had, I would say, probably millions of dollars of sweat equity put into it. And who knows what a future council might want to do in terms of, you know, finding a bit of cash here or there. I would hate to think that Arapuki would ever come into that scope, but I'd be interested in putting the question to the community of whether or not a reserve status is worth acquiring for that currently private parcel of land. So if there is a seconder in the room, thank you, Councillor Zabellin. I'd like to test that as well.
You can bring that forward. So while Councillor Barrett is sending in some words. Thank you, Kathy and Aaron, for that report. I think what it highlighted for me was the surprising complexity of managing this kind of asset, the huge range of activities that go on and the competing priorities in the space. And the report does a really excellent job of laying all of that out and explaining to the community how we will balance those conflicting priorities to get the best outcomes for the wider community, accepting that not everybody's going to be happy with that. You know, your horse riders will feel that they've been deprioritized to mountain bike riders. There are those tensions in the space, but I think the document explains really well the decisions that we're asking the community to support. So we're going to take the first, no, we can't take the first one without the second one. Okay. We'll vote on the first one while we're working out the wording for the second one. So let's vote to adopt the recreation plan as presented for consultation. Carried unanimously. And then we have Councillor Barrett's question for the consultation process. It's just going to contain a question. Happy? Councillor Barrett, Councillor Zabellin. Do you need to speak to that, Councillor Barrett? Don't think so. Good. Do we need to take some advice on this? Yeah, lose the and. Right. That the draft plan consultation include a question of whether Arapuki should be declared a reserve under the Reserves Act. Ask you to vote on that, please. Carried unanimously. We are making good progress, but we do need to take a break now for afternoon tea. So we'll take a 15-minute break back at 25 past, where we will quickly get through a couple of items before getting back to wrap up the council. Thank you. Do we have 7? Are you the important people? We good? Have we got 7 of the right people?
The independent state of Denison.
Right, we're all good to go. Quiet in the cheap seats. You're getting more expensive by the minute, I tell you. Right, we are moving to the next item on the agenda, where we're combining the final statements of intent for the Regent, Te Manawatu and the Globe. You're very happy with this process. This is the end of the signing off. We're going to take those reports as read. If you have any questions, Sarah will run round and answer them. Do you have any questions? No. Excellent. I will move the recommendation of the Culture and Sport Committee. I will seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Harpiter. The committee agrees the final statement of intent 2528, submitted by the Regent Theatre Trust Board, submitted by Te Manawatu Museums Trust Board, submitted by the Globe Theatre Trust Board. Any comments? No. I'll ask you to vote. Thank you. Fast with his fists, though. Ten votes in favour. Thank you. Next item, in fact, the next 2 items, Manawatu Community Athletics Track Annual Report for 2024, which Aaron is here to answer any questions should anybody have any, but we will take this as read. I'm sorry, Councillor, did you say you want to ask a question? Are you sure about that? Aaron, would you like to come forward with this question?
Where is it? What number is it?
Councillor Naylor, over to you.
127. Apologies, Madam Chair, I'm just quickly finding the page. My question... Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I'll just leave it. Sorry.
Well, thank you for that expression. No other questions? Good, because Aaron has left. I will move that the committee receive the Manawatu Community Athletics Track Annual Report for 2024, presented to the committee on the 25th of June, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Any comments? Councillor Naylor? No, you've come out of that list. Okay, good. No comments, then we will vote. Eleven votes in favour. Thank you. Hockey turf at Massey University and Port, which we'll take as read, but invite questions. Councillor Naylor. Aaron, would you like to come forward for the question? You're going to give Aaron a complex. There are no further questions. I will move that the committee receive the 2024 annual report for the hockey turf at Massey University, presented to the Culture and Sport Committee on 25th of June 2025, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Invite any comments. All I would like to say is that, Aaron, we value and appreciate your work. Councillor Arnott has a comment.
I'm sorry, but I should make a comment, seeing as this is one of my groups. I'd like to publicly thank the chairperson of the University Hockey Turf Steering Group, Richard Lloyd, the Senior Business Advisor Strategy and Projects at the University, for his dedicated leadership. Rich has recently left Massey for another senior leadership role, and I wish him all the very best. I've been in this group coming up 3 years now, and it's been great watching hockey grow in the Manawatu. I played hockey at college, so it's been a bit of a blast from the past. Badly, I might say. Dylan at Hockey Manawatu, he's doing a fantastic job, as did his predecessors, Jake and Neil. This city has growing competition with other centres, and we recently lost out on events because we didn't have enough turfs. The addition of 2 more in the city and our central location is sure to be a winner. Hosting the National Hockey Championships in the city was a massive, and it was a pleasure attending the opening ceremony. 48 teams filling up the city and spending their money, love it. Whatever the code, Palmerston North needs to build on these events for the sake of our economy, and we do a damn good job at hosting. Thank you, Sport Manawatu, all involved.
Thank you, Councillor, very well said. I will invite a vote. Ten votes in favour, thank you. Oh, somebody hasn't voted. Can we just take that vote again, please? Twelve votes in favour, thank you. Last item on the agenda is the committee work schedule. An extensive list of things we're going to talk about on the 10th of September. Anything to add to that, Chris? Nothing to add. I will move that we receive the work schedule dated June 2025, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Ask for you to vote on that, please. Eleven votes in favour. Who's missing? Can we run that again? Twelve votes in favour. Thank you. Fire Deb, our lovely Deputy Mayor, can I pass to you to close us out with the karakia? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. O tira tina koutou katoa. Thank you to the officers, ngā mihi ki a koutou, on behalf of the elected members, and also to those who have come along today to give presentations. Ko te pai a tātou mahi I tēnei wā, ko te tumanako kia hoki ora tātou ki te kāinga, ki ngā mahi, ki e rātu wāhanga o te hāpori. Ko tēnei a tātou inoi, mō ngā tangata katoa, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora, whara.
So 5 minutes while we swap over.